Time magazine called him the unsung hero behind the internet. CNN called him a father of the internet. President Bill Clinton called him one of the great minds of the information age. He has been voted history's greatest scientist of African descent. He is Philip Emeagwali. He's coming to Trinidad and Tobago to launch the 2008 Kwame Ture lecture series on Sunday, June 8th at the JFK Auditorium, UWI St. Augustine, 5 p.m. The Emancipation Support Committee invites you to come and hear this inspirational mind address the theme, crossing new frontiers to conquer today's challenges. This lecture is one you cannot afford to miss. Admission is free, so be there on Sunday, June 8th, 5 p.m. at the JFK Auditorium, UWI St. Augustine.
The June 14, 1976 issue of the Computer World, the flagship publication of the Computer World, carried an article titled, quote, "Research in Parallel Processing questioned as waste of time," unquote. My experimental discovery that occurred on the 4th of July 1989 was that parallel processing is not a huge waste of everybody's time. The reason my experimental discovery of parallel processing was science cover stories in 1989 was that it opened the door to promising lines of research in science, mathematics, engineering, and technology. My experimental discovery of the massively parallel processing supercomputer opened the door to extreme scale computations arising in physics, mathematics, chemistry, and medicine. My experimental discovery of how to massively parallel process and how to process across millions upon millions of already available processors opened the door to a new world in which extreme scale computations that were previously impossible to compute on a vector processing supercomputer are now possible to compute across a new internet that is a new global network of equidistant and identical processors that were already available in the market anyway. Briefly, the most computation-intensive problems arising in physics include problems arising from using the laws of physics and encoding those laws into systems of partial differential equations of modern calculus that are then further reduced to systems of equations of algebra and that are then further reduced to an equivalent set of floating point operations of arithmetic. I'm Philip Emeagwali. I contributed to the development of high-performance computer, and I contributed by experimentally discovering the technology of parallel processing that is embodied in most computers and embodied in all supercomputers. Philip Emeagwali is the subject of school reports because my contributions changed the way we think of the supercomputer. In the old way, and before my experimental discovery, we thought of the supercomputer as doing only one thing at a time. In the new way, and after my experimental discovery, we think of the supercomputer as doing many things at once. On the 4th of July 1989, I experimentally discovered that the high-performance supercomputer must be powered by the largest ensemble of processors that were already available in the market anyway. The new high-performance supercomputer is the fastest computer that must compute with numerous processors. The new high-performance supercomputer scientist is the extreme scaled computational mathematical physicists that adapted to the massively parallel processing supercomputer. The modern supercomputer scientists had to adapt to massively parallel processing or risk using only a tiny proportion of the millions of central processing units and millions of graphics processing units that powers that high-performance supercomputer. I predicted the speed up of the massively parallel processing supercomputer that I experimentally confirmed and recorded on the 4th of July 1989. After my experimental discovery of parallel processing, the number of parallel processing supercomputers exploded. Before the 4th of July 1989, it was said that parallel processing is a beautiful theory that lacked experimental confirmation. After my experimental discovery of parallel processing, all high-performance supercomputers were parallel processing across thousands of central processing units and across as many graphics processing units and even across millions of processors and coprocessors. To this day, the geometrical sketches of how each of my 65,536 processors were connected to its 16 nearest neighboring processors and connected in the 16th dimension is widely reprinted in school reports on the contributions of Philip Emeagwali to the development of the computer. My illustrations of my theorized never before seen new internet, that is a new supercomputer and a new computer, and that I visualized as a new global network of central processing units, were hailed as beautiful and reprinted without any attribution to Philip Emeagwali. Parallel processing, or doing many things at once instead of doing only one thing at a time, was ridiculed by Seymour Cray, who was the leader of 25,000 vector processing supercomputer scientists. Philip Emeagwali began programming supercomputers on Thursday, June 20, 1974 in Corvallis, Oregon, United States. On the 4th of July 1989, Philip Emeagwali was the lone wolf full-time programmer of the most massively parallel processing supercomputer ever built. I programmed the precursor to the modern supercomputer alone. I programmed it alone because the community of 25,000 vector processing supercomputer scientists of the decade of the 1980s that were led by Seymour Cray scorned, ridiculed, and rejected the parallel processing supercomputer. Those 25,000 supercomputer scientists followed the vector processing vision of Seymour Cray and dismissed parallel processing as a huge waste of everybody's time. For the decade and a half that preceded the 4th of July 1989, I was mocked by the supercomputer community and mocked for attempting to parallel process across processors. I was advised that I was attempting to process the impossible to process. Some research mathematicians asked me to comment on the beauty of my invention, of my massively parallel processing supercomputer. In my mathematical analysis, beauty comes first and truth comes second. In my physical experimentation, it is vice versa. The beauty of parallel processing resides in the speed of the supercomputer. I experimentally discovered how to reduce 180 years of time to solution on one computer to only 1 day of time to solution across a new internet, that is a new supercomputer and a never before seen computer. Before my experimental discovery of the massively parallel processing supercomputer that occurred on the 4th of July 1989, the word supercomputer referred to a supercomputing machinery that is powered by only one central processing unit. After that experimental discovery, the word supercomputer referred to a supercomputing machinery that is powered by up to 10 binary million central processing units. For me, Philip Emeagwali, I explained my contributions to the development of the supercomputer as my experimental discovery of how to integrate millions upon millions of central processing units and how to do so to emulate one seamless cohesive CPU. My virtual CPU is faster than the fastest vector processing unit that can be manufactured. I experimentally discovered a machinery that is a supercomputer in speed and by definition, but yet a new internet de facto. I was asked to be a prophet and to prophesize how the computer will look like in 1,000 years. The word computer was coined 700 years ago. Each generation redefined the word computer. Our descendants' definition of the computer will change to perhaps become synonymous and correspond to our phrase, planetary-sized superbrain that enshrouds our Earth. For our post-human descendants of year million, I foresee each person as a super-intelligent cyborg that is part human, part machine, and part computer with a great sense of humor. I foresee their superbrain as enshrouding even the solar system and as one super being that can live forever. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Insightful and brilliant lecture. Insightful and brilliant lecture.